Welcome back to episode 4 of our Good to Great Designer series, and we're going to look at Portwithick by Rich NUFC 99. Now, this video will be a bit weird because at around hole 10, I think, we're going to switch to a previous recording. I had already played it once, and then halfway through, I had a crash in the game, and I didn't realise until I then reloaded, started recording again. I didn't realise until coming to editing that the previous file for the front 9 was completely corrupted, so we couldn't use any of it. So that's why the front 9 score will bear no relation to the back 9 score that you see at the end. I'll just edit it together. Now, Rich's courses, he's put out a lot of courses, and we're going to look at a linksy one. He recommended a couple, and I think this is the better of the two. I've had a lot of people say this is probably Rich's best course. And it also, I like a good links course. So we're going to have a little look at this. I mean, firstly, just zooming around, the little environment and town is really nicely realised. That's a cool little inlet for the sandy beach area. I like the way you've used the flat water all the way out to the edge rather than ocean. That looks really nice for the calmer waters. And got our driving range. A Scottish flag, obviously, because we wouldn't know where it was without a flag. That is very important. We've got a burn cutting through, so lots of like classic link style elements. And you can see we've got joined fairways and things, and that will factor into little bits. We've got interesting with the lake down here, but we kind of make our way down to one end and then we come back, and we've got a road towards like something. Halfway hut and a shed, and we've got a road there. Okay. I would usually look for the road to have a little bit more logic as to why it is where it is. I guess that kind of makes sense, and it's not coming into play knowing that from having played bits of this before. Planting looks good, potentially. Like the gorse kind of makes sense. I like that it's clumped. I'm trying to remember what I've already said because I've already done this once, and I'm doing this about a week and a half later. So if I seem like I'm repeating myself or missing out things, that's probably why. This is a really cool look into 18 coming back into the village, and like I will mention later on how much I enjoy the clubhouse. It's fun because I can look like I know exactly what I'm going to say because it's already happened. Anyway, I'm going to leap onto the first tee then, and we'll play this first hole. Okay, so straight away we've got this narrows. Now, if you ever do a narrows, you've got to be really careful with why would I not go the other way if we've got a fairway in close proximity? Because if we're choking down, then we're suggesting to people, well, you can only hit to here. We've got to be very careful that you can't just go longer on a different direction and leave a really easy wedge shot. And I think you kind of have left that. Like, I'd be playing a partial driver down here pretty much every day because I don't really want to leave 170 into this front pin. So, or we can kind of bomb it straight over potentially. Dependent on the wind a little bit, but I'd just be wary of that choke point. Secondly, if you are doing this, I think you've given us a good amount of space with 3-wood. I don't know that we need this bunker because we're bringing the beach into play more this way anyway. So, and I feel like this one's there purely for visuals of just breaking up that space, which I have nothing against. But I don't think you really need it because you've broken up this space a lot with this bunker. As an opening tee shot, I think you can be you don't really need this one, like, because we're just defending against the person playing 5-wood. We're not really, and we're stopping someone from playing a gentle 3-wood down here because they're going to run into those bunkers. So 3-wood then becomes pretty much as choked as, well, more choked than driver. Yeah, that'd be my take. I don't think we need this bunker, and that will, well, can sound prescient, but that will become a theme. That's not a good swing. But we might be able to bounce these bunkers anyway. Yep. So, which is, obviously I've got the longest driver and I've not hit a great shot, but maybe just bumping that tee back a little bit, which actually might open up a bit more space for 3-wood in any case. Because if you hit driver here, you get all the reward that 3-wood has just kind of taken out of our hands, because that's pinched a little bit more. I really like the burn, good little bridge. I don't know why it's going up in the middle. Now, the green itself, I'm just because I've said this on the first play, I'm going to treat this as if it's trying to be an authentic links course, because I think that's what we were going for. And if that's the case, this isn't a links green. It's very propped up. There's lots of big long slopes, which you don't typically, you can get, but like this sort of false front, what you far more commonly see are mounds around the green being brought in. So if, let's say, there is a false front here, that would be part of a bigger depression that is coming way off the green. So all of this would be a dip. And then if we've got a mound, like a run on here, so we've got the back of the green where it's running on, well, that would be a bigger mound, and the green's kind of placed on top of them, but you see far more external contours than like internal contours that run you off, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to word. But yeah, for that reason, it's not, I wouldn't say a true kind of authentic links green. It's like kind of, I don't really know what it is. It's kind of like a Parkland green on a links course. It's also really big. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but that's gone off. That's off the green. We hit a really bad putt. I got distracted. Lovely little bogey. I do think the burn maybe gets a little bit busy with rocks and things as well. One common feature that I do not understand why these fences are here. And we have them on every tee box, if I remember rightly, but only on the back tee, which also makes no sense. Why would we have it there and not on others? And I just don't really get what the thought process with this one, with the fences were. Okay, here's another example as to like, why are we placing this bunker here? Other than that, maybe there was a dip in the land, but looking at the rest of the land around it, I'm not sure there was. But if I hit driver, I can clear this with my driver carry. And we've got to think about how we're playing for all players. If I can only carry it 270, 280, suddenly driver's really pinched because it's pinched down here as well. I can't go to the side of this or I'm running off. Can't go up here or I'm running off. So I'd be laying back, and then the 3-wood's in the same sort of area. I think I see what we're going for in that here's your angle play. But to this pin, I'm never generating that angle anyway. I can't, even if I go down here, I can't get around that bunker. You can see the line of play still taking me over the corner. So why would I not hit driver and just have the wedge in to... That's a little bit of a better swing. And we don't always want to be clear, we don't want to always think about the person who is with the longest driver, but we do want to have things in such a way that they might be incentivized to lay up. With this one, I'm just simply never getting the angle to this pin. And I think this is an extreme pin on here. I can see why to these pins you might go right. So maybe I've just drawn a bad pin. But equally, I still think you're taking wedge in to any of them. It's a decent shot. Middle of the green is fine. I do like the planting. I feel like it's a little... We have a lot of it, and I think I'd have lost the bits of gorse along here because you won't typically see them. Like grasses, maybe. Yeah, so like you've got down here, these sorts of grasses definitely, but probably not as much in the way of clusters of gorse. But if we're looking at this view here, there's a lot of gorse, and it's very heavy. Even courses like Dornoch, you have walls or areas that are very gorsey, and then there's areas that aren't. No, it's not absolutely everywhere, so it's maybe making it a bit more patchy. Couldn't quite pick up that drop stroke on the first. Even there, we've got that big mound at the back, which is doing a better job of tying into the green. I think that can come into the green a little bit more subtly. I'll leap back into camera mode and just go and look at that previous screen because I don't feel I've explained it that well. But I far prefer this. We have two mounds here on the bunker, here that are influencing the rest of the green, and that's infinitely better. Actually, no, that one does a good job. I think this one is kind of, it could be mounding into the green a little bit more, and we could be raising up this bit so that I would want your heavy rough to be like the top part of this, because otherwise you're going to hit fairway and roll back into heavy rough, which isn't really the most pleasing thing. Okay, back to here. I remember this hole. So we've talked about previously with driver how we're protecting a lot on the previous 2 holes against 3-wood. And we're doing the same here. So we can't hit 3-wood here because we'll run out of room, probably. Or like it's a risky shot. We compare our landing zone there to our landing zone here. Why would I not take driver? Can't go here. Okay, so we drop down to 5-wood. There, where I might run out of space, or I might run into this, or I might go right into the water, versus here. There, where even if I land with this, we need more fairway short here in any case to allow the really safe layup option. But even this, like we're saying, 4-iron should be the safest play imaginable. But if I miss-hit it, I'm maybe not even reaching the fairway. Compared to here, I just think this is the easiest play on offer. It's an absolute auto drive. And I don't really see very much danger, particularly obviously with this pin. But I just don't see any reason why you wouldn't go for driver. And a drivable par 4 must have your biggest danger near the green. There must be a real risk. Yeah, we could end up on here, but that's not the biggest risk because there's not even the water there. The water's way shorter. Oh, where are we? The water's down by the fairway. That's your riskiest play on this hole, is to lay up to here. It doesn't give you any advantage over driving the green. And it's not the sort of green, because it's a bit of a punch bowl, it's not the sort of green where I'd be worried about really being on the wrong tier, because it's a 2-putt to most of them, unless I hit a really bad first putt. So I think this one just needed a bit more of like risk on the tee shot, and then allow those other options, like that mound and this mound and this mound in conjunction. Yes, there's an option there, yes, there's an option there, yes, there's an option there, but they're all kind of unusable because A, it's so trivial to drive the green, and B, you've kind of compartmentalised the fairway a bit too much, meaning that any of them, you just need to be so precise. And for what it's worth, I eagled that one on my first playthrough as well. I think that's one where I'd be looking at it a little more. Okay, so we just walked across here, so now we're up, hitting back. I did also comment about this bit of fairway being kind of unnecessary as well on the previous playthrough, because I remember seeing it off the tee and wondering why it was there. I think I just made it a wall-to-wall course, because, yeah, but I guess it's maybe to save on meter. I like this green. I thought this is the strongest hole so far. It's got a good view, obviously, it gets good lighting, that helps. But it's a short par 3 with a tricky green that's really well protected. You definitely don't want to be left. I think that works nicely. I think the green contouring could be a little neater in terms of how it transitions very quickly to flat. So if you see it gets dead flat about there because you've flattened around the pin, I'd still want to see some side slope here. It's very rare that you're going to go high, dead flat, low. You'd kind of see, even if these are light green beads moving this way, I'd look for that. And I'd also do all that you can to raise up the land here so you don't end up with a putt rolling off here and into the rough, because that's rubbish for everyone. But if you raise up the bunker lip with like third brush on page 1, that'll flatten out this area. It just takes a bit of practice. Tiny target. It's quite a nervy tee shot. I like this one. And I do like the way you've broken up in front. This one's framed really nicely, I will say. I think it looks good. Pretty good shot. Happy with that. I think I've underread that, but oh no, we are good. Lovely, back to -2. Don't know what I ended up on my previous play by the end of front 9. Fences, same thing. Okay, so my second major takeaway, I remember the first one, partly was the 3-wood versus driver thing, and we're kind of seeing the same here. If you get driver, you get all of that space. 3-woods, you're bouncing way down, so why wouldn't I try and hit driver? But in fairness with this one, it's a long par 4. Like, driver should be the play, and you haven't over bunkered it, so it's kind of a how good of a shot can you hit. And I like that we can hedge our bets this way, but you're potentially blind going in. You can kind of use this mound to funnel down to where you will be able to see. My comment with this one is more like the sculpting itself, because we've got what is actually a relatively flat area. Well, it's a relatively flat plot with some very big undulations and then kind of nothing in between. So like you've got this elephant buried, this elephant buried, and then when you're not on that, it's very, very flat. I kind of want to see a little bit more micro contouring, which will make those two stand out a little bit. I don't mean moguls in the fairway. There's a good example on the back nine that we'll come to later. Again, I can sound prophetic. But I think it just needs that little bit in between. Because what makes links golf wonderful is those varieties of lies. And you've got a lot of the big stuff, but you want a little bit more of the medium. Because we've got our side hill lie there. And again, this green, kind of not really a linksy green. I think you've got a great site for it as well. Like you're asking people to bounce the ball in, but then we've got a high tier back and we've got a low tier front, and it's just like these big slopes rather than any kind of littler contours and more interesting small breaks. Like links greens are really known for their subtle breaks. We've just kind of got the... I feel like I guess what I'm trying to explain is like all of these greens feel very compartmentalized. Like here's a section for one pin, here's a section for another pin, here's a section for another pin. And whilst that can be great as a starting point, I'd want to see them a bit more randomized so it feels less like 4 mini greens in essence. So I'm assuming there's one up here as well. Or front, I think probably back. It would fit the character of the hole a bit better. And even for this one, like this back pin is kind of target golf because we can't run it on. I mean, we probably could, but we'd be going over 2 spines and a runoff down here. We're probably being left with this uphill putt regardless. We just don't want to go left, which is, I think, where I went first time round. So let's try and avoid that. Yeah, knew it was going to leap right. You can see the purple flowers of the Scottish flag from here. I like that we get the little view of the other green over there as well. That's nice. I do think we've overplanted a bit, particularly down here. You can see how dark it's getting in the rocks as well. And actually thinning it out would probably give you a bit of a better effect. And it takes some courage to thin out planting and know when to leave stuff barren and when to plant, because it's really easy to just keep adding stuff. I'm very much guilty of that myself. But like taking stuff away and using negative space. There's a great YouTube tutorial on the use of negative space in, what was it? Facing Worlds. It's like I would say Doom, but that like level design, really interesting. I very recommend that. Okay, I remember when I first saw this hole, I thought you were playing to this green, and it all frames as if you are. And I think the routing gets a touch awkward in places, and this is one of them. There's another one coming up as well, because you're not like the planting here doesn't really suggest to me we should be hitting over it, because the bunkers here and here look like they're framing the boundary of the hole rather than hitting over it. And I don't know what you could have done differently, other than that it just looks a bit odd. And I think it's because of where you put this hole in the corridor with this one. They're just all a bit too close, and you can kind of get away with it because it's links, but if we're wanting to push on, that's the sort of thing. Like, well, one of the things that we'd look at, just like logical routing can take you so far. Again, we're on those big undulations, and I should have gone left. This green is kind of stumping me as well, because this one is very much random, but it's still kind of controlled random. We've got these big sloped kicker slopes and then feeding us down. Then we've got little mounds here, here, and here. I think the main thing I don't feel like we've really got with this is the scale of undulations, and that requires looking really closely at similar courses, because we go from really big to really small It's like where those happen. I think part of it's probably experience of playing this type of course as well. Do not mind being blind up here, because we hit a bad tee shot to a blind part of the fairway. And we found one down. We also have some really weird sloping in that it's all falling front to back, but then we get down here and it's flowing back to front. And I think this green just needed a bit, it just needed redoing. I like the green side, but there's too much fighting itself and going on. Like if you can see where this is falling, this is going that way, but then it's dropping back down this way. And it's like everything is breaking everywhere. I don't really know why. Where am I hitting to? I'm hitting to there. I think generally a really good rule is always look at, you don't always have to go with it, but what is the land generally doing? And do you want a green that fights that? It's always going to be harder to get that working against it or that goes with it. And this one generally does go with it, but front to back, you want to put on far fewer slopes on that green. If it's going front to back, that is your difficulty. If the ball is going to run away when it lands, and you've got to therefore make the rest of the green really benign. If it's big Redan kicker, which we kind of have here, well, how are we allowing people to get to that? Because we put a bunker here. Put a bunker short. Zoom out a little bit again. But if it's Redan kicker and you're asking people to bounce a ball in, well, let's use that to its maximum. So let's put a bunker short and bunker this side. Ask people to bounce the ball round and down. Great. If it's punch bowl, that's interesting as well. But in that case, let's put the bunker short and ask people to carry it or bounce it on or something. It's kind of just doing all of these things at once, and therefore it's not really doing any of them particularly well because there's just too much going on and it's not cohesive. And that's the thing. You want one singular idea done really, really well. Okay, so this was the second routing issue because we've got a par 5 and we're playing up here, but we're playing directly over that short par 4 and this par 3. If I remember rightly, and the par 3 is there, but we're playing over its tee, especially if we're cutting the corner. And like, if you're designing this and you're finding yourself playing over a previous hole, you will have had issues most likely placing pins on this green because it will keep leaping you back to the previous hole and changing a pin on there. That's a telltale sign that we've rooted ourselves in a bad way, and we've got to treat this sort of like right angled tight dog legs around another hole. You've got to treat that really, really carefully. The only way you can really get away with it is when you're doing a short par 3 or a par 3 in the middle, because that requires less fairway. It's also extremely wide, which is fine. I think last time I was slightly downwind and you can carry it towards there. I really like the green side there. I think you nail that part of it. And I like that it cambers round, and this view from this approach is really cool. This is lovely. Again, I think we've overdone the green though, because we've got a slope. If you've seen the greens tutorials, we're looking at things like slope down to a slope. So if I run down here, there's a risk that I keep running and go all the way through, and that's really can be quite frustrating. And in order to stop that happening, because the issue is the concept of tier down to tier, which particularly on a front to back green can be really tricky. On a back to front green, you don't really have the issue. Imagine you're playing from this way. We've got that as a backstop. You're not rolling further. Backstop. I know, like, due to how the ball's coming in. But with this one, because the ball's running that way originally, it's just going to expedite it. It's going quicker and quicker. But in order to make this work, therefore, we've got it dropping down, but then the slope's coming back this way, and then it drops down, and the slope's coming back this way. And even on the top, we've got it's rising into this tier and then going down. The green is all just fighting itself and doing different things, and therefore you're just going to have all sorts of awkward putts. Beyond that, you have tried to allow for a ground game approach. I think sculpting again can just be a little neater. So we've got this big mound kicking us into a bunker. And like to accomplish the same effect, I would be lowering this just a bit, making it smoother with here, so that at the moment it's kind of all or nothing. If you're here, you're landing dead flat and going on. Whereas actually, if it was all flatter and lower, well, that would slow the ball up rolling into the green, which you're going to need if the green's going downhill. You don't want it propelled forward. And you've also got more risk of it going into these bunkers, because even if it hits here, it's probably careering way right anyway. Anyway, should probably hit a shot now. I do like that I'm hitting off camber. But again, I think that adds a little difficulty, and we'd want to allow for that with the bunkering on the approach. Excuse me. And we've defended against this loads with 2 bunkers. I think I'd have lost either of these, probably this one. Allow people to work it in from this side. I think this could be a really great green if it's just allow a running shot. Didn't turn as much as I thought it would do. Okay. We got a wall around the base of here. Oh, that's interesting. Like I say, I love the green. I would just simplify. I think one of my key messages would be just have a really clear idea of what you want each shot value to be. What type of shot are you encouraging? And have that in mind when you're designing the green or the approach or the tee shot. Like, what's the thing we're trying to do? We now hop over the road, and we're back to like allowing the longest driver to hit as far as they possibly want, and just segmenting the fairway massively if you've got a shorter driver. I don't think I need to talk much more about that. I do like the reverse camber aspect of this. Same kind of thing with the green. I don't really understand what the slope is doing here, because it's all just kind of gathering off the green, but it's not an outside contour coming into the green, because the dip is here. We'd expect that to dip off. Additionally, we've got another one of those kind of propped up greens, which you don't really see on links courses very often. It would be a real rarity that you saw a links green that goes off on all sides. I can think of like Royal St George's 10 is a good example, but there's not very many others. And additionally, if we look at the surroundings and what the land's wanting you to do, you've got this awesome amphitheatre. The green side's so good. The land is kind of going all down this way, but we've gone down and then propped up a green kind of artificially, then down again, and then we're going back up. Like, to me, this is screaming put a punch bowl in here, or at worst bench a green into this hillside and then have it all running in one direction. But this slope is just totally fighting what everything else is doing. So I think just look at what you've got land wise around it. Go from there. Plus, you've got the space to make this a long par 4. Would be really cool, even if we have just had a kind of running approach. That's the best shot I've hit for a while. I do love the little step path up going backwards, and the space you've allowed around the green is really nice. It's a cool green site. It just needed to be allowed to be what it was naturally, rather than it feels like we've had a circle brush and just raised up the middle by about 5 feet. And you could get that on any course. The beauty of links is the randomness that you really get with all of it. Definitely doing better than last time, I must be. Really like this look. I remember liking this from my first playthrough. And maybe I'd have allowed a little sunlight to come through to here, so you can see a bit more of the planting, but otherwise framed really nicely. And this screen is one that does make a lot more sense because it works with the land a little bit more. This mound is nicely done. It's like gentle, but it influences play, and you've got this one beautifully. Additionally, we've got these kind of helping slopes that fit with the shot that we're trying to play. We're trying to help people play a long shot in. It's a little forced at the back of the green with how we're dropping so harshly off, having had this like back tier. That's the only thing I would change. Like this should be softened out a little bit more. But beyond that, I really like this one. That's probably too much. Might need that back tier. Whee! Got lucky. But again, that's the one slope on the green that feels a little manufactured. It's designed to do exactly what it has just done. So playability wise, it's a positive decision. Like having this as a backstop for people who go a little bit too long. Like I'd far rather that than this all falling off down to here. The issue is how we kind of justify this slope. So once you put this in, look at the land around it. Like I think a good concept with link screens is whatever slope there is, how can you justify it from like 20 yards away or so? Because I would be sculpting out to about here or here just to make that little slope make sense. And that's what you will see the best designers, best architects in real life do. Like shaping starts a long way away from where it actually impacts your game. Absolutely blinding sunlight, but what can you do? And then 10. Now I got to the T, I got to the green on this one, and I had a putt down to there. So, yeah, kind of, I don't mind this tee shot at all if we hadn't been relentlessly stopping people from hitting 3-wood. Because now that you're doing it again, and you're not really allowing driver, that partial drive actually might be okay for the guy with 275 driver for a change. But we've got to allow another option. I think you only need one of these two bunkers, either or. Kind of, I don't know which one I'd go with. I'd probably keep this one because I think then you allow 3-wood all the way out here. You allow driver over it, but you are asking people to scale back a little. The sculpting itself, I like that we're running people all the way down there. And I love the green site. Like, this is the kind of green site you've needed because it looks low profile. It looks like it fits in with the land around it. The dip in the fairway and the break is completely natural. That makes complete sense. Not sure how we get to the green. I guess we just walk across the grass. It might be nice to cut a path through, but it doesn't matter. Yeah, we don't go this way. Yeah, I'd probably lost this one. I think would make it a better hole. And also because I really like the ridge line it's cut into. It'd be cool to see that used to funnel balls over here and maybe into the rough, depending on how you want to do it. I don't know what I will do. Partial. Oh, there's partials and there's very fast. Let's go find a bunker. This bunker sculpting isn't your finest either. I haven't commented on any of the others. They look absolutely fine. This one's just less good. It's a bit bowly, a bit big, I would say as well. Right. I do comment on the rocks later on. I think they work here because they're not in your face and they're like off to the side. I do like them, and I like the bunkering here. I like really like that this one is lower than this one. That makes a really cool visual effect. And this one on the other side is good. Okay, let's try and hit. Now I tried to play an approach in the previous version to land it here because I was certain that if you hit it here, you were going to run off the green. So we're going to try and do the same thing again. And I missed, so I couldn't prove it. Oh, not quite high enough. No, nowhere near. In fact, it's almost stopped on an orange. Fantastic. But I think particularly at 160s, if you are landing it here, that's going to kick you a long way off. So I just want to be careful of play testing. I can't remember if I hit the part or not. I don't think I did. So we're going to exit out now, and you're going to get the new version and where we are currently. Hope you enjoy the rest. And we got a crash. So I'm not entirely sure what I was saying, but I think we were talking about the big red slope. Anyway, as a green, I think there's a lot of good to it. Generally, that big mound in the middle was probably a little bit too bold. with how it's going to play or how it's dipping into the bottom tiers. But I really like the green site. I really like the way you've kind of broken up the terrain. There's a lot about this hole that I really like. I think your planting's probably a little bit too close to the hole surfaces. That's kind of a general thing, I would say. But I do like a lot of it. So we'll let it slide. Oh, tried our best to miss it. Good starts the back nine. Another one of those little walking paths that look really cool. Okay, really wide fairway, really big green. 491, and we've got no hazards whatsoever and big punch bowl. This makes a lot more sense than the other little punch bowl we had earlier, which I'm happy with. Bunker here. I'm not really sure why. I feel like this is the obvious play every time. Okay, it's blind, but it's blind from wherever. I like the green. I don't think there's a lot of strategy to the tee shot because it's just a find the fairway and go again. You'd probably want some sort of marker stick for the punch bowl that you've got. That's by the by. It's fun. Punch bowls are fun. We like this. Again, I think it's just the thing that is missing in places is those little undulations and that like detail work on some of those. You look at a lost preserve, for example. Oh well, I wasn't even paying attention on the part. Dreadful. If you look at a lost preserve, for example, it's that detail that on the land work that really makes it pop, like those subtle, smaller undulations. Amongst obviously the great planting. Okay, this one worked. I would be interested if you went back through the playthrough and counted how many reverse camber balls you've got, where you're just carrying this and because we're kind of ending up in the same place regardless of what we do, which means we can't ever really hold this angle. Maybe if we can carry all of this, but into this wind we can't. Also, it feels like we've suddenly got into a really hilly part of the plot with this bit, which is no bad thing. Although it looks like the thing you'll notice is those like lack of little movements means it looks like a couple of big brush moves, and then we've just flattened the tops of them maybe a little bit, or like I just want it looking a little bit more random. I am nitpicking a lot, which is kind of the aim. That's par five. Got another push up green, which I'm not against per se, but it's not really it's not really linksy. So, and I've said this on other playthroughs, that becomes one where it's like was your vision of proper links? Were you drawing from those types of courses? And if so, take that feedback on board. Oh, nearly got lucky. If not, and you were just building this course, then that's one to question whether actually, no, these were the greens you wanted, and it's just me expecting something slightly different. Or if I'm expecting something different, why am I expecting that? And why do those courses do greens like that? Because typically in very high winds, the reason they're flat to the ground and not pushed up is because when it's in very high winds, people can always roll the ball onto the green and land it short, no matter what the wind is. Short, and we've got a kind of double green complex with a big green, water in front. I feel the planting's gotten maybe a bit over dense here, which is why it's going quite black. Plus the lighting's hurting a little bit on this side. I would have probably thinned that out a little bit. Or what broadened your burn if you could, or brought it a little away. It's tough. 8-iron pitch, no thank you. Oh, that could be anywhere. Eh, okay. It's a really big green for a really short hole. And I think you can do that, but you have to put a load of slope on them. And we've basically just got a back tier and a front tier with a little mound here, which is interesting. But I don't really see what pins you can put around this. You can't put one. If you're putting one here, that's dicey because you're just saying you're either there and you're stone dead for a birdie, or you've got a kind of fairly comical par. You can put one there, which well, we put one where we've got it. Probably prefer it a little shorter, but that's okay. One here. I'm assuming your others are one here, one here, one here. But that would beg the question of why this entire part of the green. I think this little mound needed to come back here, and I'm gonna guess there's a pin somewhere around here. Because otherwise, what's the point of having that bit of green? I don't think with the slopes you can really handle one there. Could be wrong. Oh, that's racing by. Full view of the lighthouse in the distance. We've got the pine trees in the backdrop work really nicely. The little town's good. Okay, and now we're getting to the rocky area, which I'll be honest, this is just a little jarring, I think. I get why we've got it because of the water, and like we typically have rocks, but this just doesn't really feel like it belongs. And then because of that, you've brought the rocks into here, to, and I'm guessing that's to make these feel like they belong and they're not just there. I wouldn't have used any of the rocks. I think it would be better. And the straight line here is interesting. And we've also got the purple bushes, which we haven't had before. This is another one of those holes where there's a lot going on. In terms of how many times have we broken up our drive, we're trying to give options. We've got an option here. We're saying you can go big heroic carry, or an option here which everyone can reach, which is probably the best option for most pins. So then why are we breaking up this area? Because nobody's playing 3-wood to here. And we're putting fairway over more than this. So why are we leaving planting here? I don't get the bunker here. I don't really know what we're stopping. And why would we be laying up when we can just hit driver over here? And then you can pull back to the tee and you can't really see any of those options because you've got all of the rocks. And this is one where I'd have been redrafting. So similar things as well with the bunker. This bit of sculpting here I would be tweaking. Same with here. Let's try and make this the high point, and then after that is a bit flatter. That would also serve to mean that you don't have those propped up greens that you've got. Because if the bunker is at kind of the height of the green, then you've got land. This fairway is actually helping you to land the ball short. Whereas at the moment, this fairway, all it's doing is tipping you back into the bunker, but probably into the heavy rough with how it plays, which we don't really want. Stop giving me a pitch. As ever, the aim of the series is to try and give you everything I got. So we're not going to, if I see something, I'm going to say it. It might mean that it comes across as overly critical, but I'm assuming that's what we're after. And that was a fun approach. And that red slope works really well. At the end of the day, we're 6 under and I'm still enjoying my round. That's good. Okay, we have blinding sunlight, which is a fault of the game and not yours. This is interesting. And this is what we've wanted. See all of the micro undulations and things. all of this. This is where you compare this part. So looking at that, and then looking at here, and that's your difference. And there's a few little bits down here, but I would imagine this is partly like, because it's probably I'm guessing a first attempt at links, like it's just getting used to it. But you can see the big difference between how much movement there is there. And like, I might soften little bits of it, but it would be running like a flattened brush that's like this width through here and just smoothing gently, but keeping the main ridges that you've got. So I think it adds so much more interest. It does help that you've got the light directly on it as well. Now, as for this, the previous par 4 was obviously drivable. I think for this one, unless the pin is here, it's also kind of obviously drivable, but you can end up in some bad spots because of the land movement, because we end up left of this, we're potentially in heavy rough. Right, and we're on, but we don't want to be past the pin, or we've got, although it's in a bit of a bowl. I think past is okay. I mean, you could play down this side. It would be interesting. I don't know if it's... I feel like this side is still the play. I have a lot of time for this hole, and I really like that, unlike the previous par 4 that was drivable, you've left all of this open. So if I want to play a simple 3-wood and trust a chip or a pitch, I can do that. And for variety's sake, I think that's what I'm going to do. I would probably, in career mode or in a round, I would be driving this. The one thing I wish you'd done would have been plant this a little bit less. In fact, generally this hole and this area is just, it's very densely planted, and it would work so much better with less. Same over here, like the moment we're an inch off the light rough, we're into grass, and you don't need to do it. The textures can kind of speak for themselves. But okay, we're going to play into the little minefield, or rather, let's play over to the left a little. At the lighthouse. It's a really fun look with the ball going up. And we'll just see it bounce around and work out where we end up. Okay, so we've got a little... See, this is fun. In real life, I would love to play this shot, because you've got so many ways in which you can play it. You could be putting this, you could be... obviously, we can't in the game. You could be chipping it just to here and rolling it down and using the backstop. Be throwing it up high, which is what like people who never played links courses would try to do. In real life, I'd be chipping this the whole day and just like bumping it there, watch it roll down, and it will kind of funnel back. So much more fun. However, because it's the game we've got, we try and chip it. Try and chip it. Okay. Come on, Rich. Let's see what the ground game does for us. Pretty good. Hey, that's a much more fun shot. That's the most satisfying birdie I've had in a long time. See, that's a really fun hole because of what makes that fun is that we can use the ground. We've got options of how we get to the hole, but also the fact that you didn't overbunk the fairway. You didn't try, like, you've provided options by not limiting options, by not chucking bunkers everywhere or segmenting the fairway. This one's kind of at grade. We've got some runoffs, but it's not running off the greens so much. It's more just like if you miss. But length of shot, this works, because I wouldn't call this as much of a push-up green as the others. I was hoping I got a slow. That'll do. Hitting straight at the houses, which are old. That's a really interesting one, and I'd be very interested to know if that reacted the way you thought it would. And for me, that's having done a series on the green sculpting, I'd be willing to bet that is not where you wanted that to end up. Still, here's where we are. I think having played a number of Richard's courses now, I'd come back to two things. One is like the options. Oh, have we got a big fence right next to those houses? I'm sure they appreciate that view. So again, we can kind of just hit driver over, and although if we don't, we do want to be down this side, but it's a longish par four, so we're probably not hitting 3 wood. We could, but even if we do, we're still blocked off from really getting at this pin. Granted, it's better than over here, but I think my main takeaway would be number one is know when a hole is not working and redraft. And I've thought this about a number of your courses for a while, that like in the nicest way possible, you push out an awful lot of courses, but that means that there's not that like idea one didn't work, let's try idea two, or let's try idea three. And like that's where, as we saw with Colics, like that's where the good to great really happens, because a lot of the very best designers will redraft holes 4, 5 times, particularly for contest courses. Obviously, this isn't one, but like that'd be the sort of thing where if I'm standing on whatever the tee was with all the rocks in front and the multiple bunkers, it almost feels like we're adding lots of things to it rather than questioning whether they should really be there, or like if the hole would be better off without them, or playing it in different winds and seeing actually what are my options, or if I didn't want to hit driver, what do I do? Well, I didn't really have much of a chance for that part, unfortunately. And the other one's like, I think just occasionally dial back on the planting, let the course and the hole breathe a little bit. It's all very on top of. We don't necessarily need. Final hole. That is a big old hogsback spine. Okay, so the same thing comes here. If we're hitting driver, obviously. But if we're not hitting driver, well, we're not hitting 3 wood, so we're hitting driver. So, which kind of works. It's an awkward place to split the fairway, but however you do it is going to be. I'm not worried about that. Big green, really big green, really big green. I think the other thing is just like occasionally scaling and stuff like that. And I think when you're playing other courses, like note how big greens are. RJ Wilson is the obvious example I will always go to for most of my courses. Of like, he's a guy who can go big greens, small greens, and make them work with the amount of sizes. But if you go and look at a Geyser course, look at the green sizes, look at the slopes that are on them. Like Lone Grove is a great example of how to do big greens with lots of slopes. That is a dreadful shot. This one feels a touch big, and yet I've still missed it. So rendering that comment entirely pointless. How long was the hole? 474. It shouldn't have been that long. I'm just bad. Sit down. Here we go. I do really like the little dock area you've put in as well. And like, the clubhouse is very cool. It fits. It fits really nicely, actually. Not sure about the little housing estate and how that works. That's a little bit funky, but Link's stuff happens. They kind of evolve around it. I'm going to drop a shot on the last hole. Boo. 2 shots. So there we go. Oh, well, what a way to finish. 3 shots dropped in the last 2 holes. It's a really fun round. I know I gave you a lot, but then I did say at the top that like links is the thing I know really well, and like more than any other style of course. I've played an awful lot of it, so I will always have more to say on that style of course. And particularly with things like the greens, I feel like it feels like you've seen links courses but not necessarily played them that much. I could be wrong, but they're very different to what you might expect, and it's trying to give the reasons as to why they're different. So it's that range of shots that you might hit into them, and a propped up green that's 2 feet off can only accept an aerial shot, which an aerial shot is typically played when the fairway is easy to hit and not in wind. So therefore, in wind, when, for example, on a long par four I've played before, and some days I've had driver gap wedge in, other days I've had driver 3-wood 5-iron, and I'm just on the front of the green. Like, the type of green you have to build for both of those eventualities is very different. It's going to be lying pretty flat to the ground, which is why they're not typically propped up, and why they typically have a lot of helping slopes and mounding around the greens. Um, but also then means that if you miss the green slightly off, you've got those kind of options, like we did on that short par 4 15th. We have the options to bounce the ball on and use the slopes in a really interesting way. I do think my main takeaway from all of this 100% would be edit your holes. There are some where they work really, really well. 15 was a great example. I thought 18 was pretty solid. I really liked that. The green, maybe a little bit big. I'm forgetting a few because I had the crash in the middle, but a couple of the par threes as well. I thought 4 was really good. 9 was really good. The 2 on the back, 9, I cared for a little less, but that's. And then also recognize when you're kind of doing the same thing. So we had all of those, a lot of the reverse cambers, or when you're playing it and that bunker is never in play. A good tip that I've picked up from Pithy is things like play around as Tiger Woods or play around as, I don't know, Brooke Henderson, and see where their driver ends up. So you've got an idea of how it's going to play for everyone. Or play around with the 305 driver when you've boosted everything. And I'm kind of at 100, but you can push it even further. You realise you can blow it over most of the hazards, then we probably need to tweak a few things. So that would be what I'd really look at. And then just also, I check the routing because I know on the front nine there were a couple of crossovers that were a little awkward. So just when you find that, spend loads of time before you're laying down the surfaces and work out how are those two holes going to interact. If you're in, and are you going to discourage someone from hitting over another green or hitting onto another tee? Because there's always going to be in virtual golf land, there's always going to be people who try to hit down another fairway because that gives them a better angle, even when you'd never do it in real life. We can't legislate for all of that, but that's different to kind of putting the ideal line directly over a previous tee or a previous green, which we had on one of the holes. But there's loads I like. I thought the environment was really cool. I thought a lot of the hole designs were really interesting. I enjoyed playing it. Like the greens weren't too tough, although I thought there were a few slopes that show me that maybe we could have play tested a little bit more to see some of those reactions. I'm thinking about that 16th, for example, but also the really big slope on, I want to say 10. Some of the green sites are great. The planting's really good. Just dial it back a little bit occasionally. But yeah, that's about all I've got. Hopefully this helps, and see you again soon.